something to think about.
Shalom and greetings. We welcome you to this week's Sabbath message. This week's Sabbath message is entitled Deception from Within, Part 2. Deception from Within, Part 2. Now, in Part 1, we shared Yeshua warns all to be cautious of the leaders that we follow, and specifically called out the scribes and the Pharisees. We grew and moved from just knowing to understanding who both the scribes and the Pharisees were, and began examining Yeshua's dialogue in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23. If you have not seen Deception from Within Part 1, you are strongly encouraged to view it. It is on his servant's website and YouTube channel. Let us now pick back up with Yeshua's dialogue starting in the Gospel of Matthew, and we're going to go from Matthew chapter 23, verses 13 through 33. Now, these passages are the 8 woes. And these passages are the 8 woes of the Messiah to the scribes and the Pharisees. These 8 woes are actually the antithesis, the exact opposite of the 8 Beattitudes Yeshua shared in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verses 3 through 12. Now, these woes show the scribes and Pharisees are in total opposition to the Beatitudes the Messiah shared should be practiced. So let us start reading and pick back up with the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23 and verse 13. It reads, "But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites." Now understand these 8 hypocrites, these 8 woes, he uses this word hypocrites quite often. So in the Greek, this word hypocrites actually means a stage actor, implying someone that is acting as if they are true spiritual leaders. "But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against or before or in their faces of men. For ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer or to permit ye them that are entering to go in." So he's saying, you scribes and Pharisees, you stage actors, acting as if you're true spiritual leaders, you shut up the kingdom of heaven before and in the faces of the men and women that are trying to enter, because you're not going to go in yourself, but you don't even permit them that are trying to enter to go in. Wow. This is in contrast now to the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 3. So let us read the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 3. "Blessed or happy are the poor." Now let us understand what this word poor is. In the Psalms, in chapter 40, verse 17, poor is used, and it is referring to here the needy, those knowing Yahweh Elohim is their help and deliverer. So blessed or happy are the poor, those that know Yahweh Elohim is their help and deliverer. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So here, the kingdom of heaven is opened to the poor in spirit. Get that? This is identifying those that know they are in need of Yahweh Elohim's spirituality help. They're in need of Yahweh Elohim's help spiritually, having nothing to do with money or wealth. Whereas in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23 verse 13, the kingdom of heaven was shut up by those that did not feel they need spiritual help. So the kingdom of heaven is shut up by those, they don't feel they need spiritual help. They don't need Yahweh Elohim's spiritual help. In the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23 verse 13, the kingdom is shut up by those. It's shut up by the scribes and the Pharisees. While in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5 verse 3, the kingdom is opened by the Messiah. Scripture appears to be clear that the way to finding the kingdom of heaven opened is with a poor or needy spirit versus a wealthy or independent spirit. It is of paramount importance that as believers, we understand poor is not speaking of a financial condition, but a spiritual condition. Remember, it said the poor in spirit. So it's not speaking of a financial condition, but of a spiritual condition. This woe represents the kingdom shut up to all those that are not in need of the spiritual help, to all of those that are not poor in spirit. But the Beattitudes represents the kingdom opened to the poor. This is the first comparison of the woes of the scribes and Pharisees and the Beatitudes given by Yeshua. Let us continue and pick back up in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23 verse 14. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. Remember, stage actors pretending as if they are truly living and operating in spirituality. For ye devour. This word devour here means forcible appropriation of. For ye devour widows' houses. And for a pretense signifies the assuming of something so as to disguise one's real motives. Like a hypocrite, like we just said, a stage actor. So, and for a pretense make long prayer. Therefore, ye shall receive the greater, more abundant damnation judgment. Now, this is in contrast to the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 4. So let us read. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 4 reads, Blessed or happy are they that mourn. Now again, let us understand this word mourn. In Psalms chapter 119, verse 136, it is speaking of mourning the law not being kept. So blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Now in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 14, those that mourn are distressed by the scribes and Pharisees. Those widows whose house they forcibly took. While in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 4, those that mourn are comforted by the Messiah. So those that are saddened by the things of this world, remember to mourn that the law is not being kept. So those that are saddened by the things of this world, the Messiah will come to their aid and they will be comforted. Unlike the scribes and the Pharisees that are causing the sadness by their actions, they, the scribes and the Pharisees, will be greatly judged. This woe represents mourners distressed. The Beatitudes represents comfort for mourners. This is the second comparison of the woes of the scribes and the Pharisees and the Beatitudes given by Yeshua. So we'll continue in reading. We're going to pick back up in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23 and verse 15. It reads, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, stage actors! For ye compass, or you go about, sea and land, both, to make or prepare one proselyte." Now, this word proselyte in the New Testament is used of converts to Judaism. Converts to Judaism, not to the scripture, but to Judaism, or foreign converts to the Jewish religion. So, ye compass, go about sea and land to prepare one proselyte. And when he is made or converted, ye make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. Twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. This is declaring the impossibility of their escaping the judgment of hell. Now, this is in contrast to the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 5. So let us read. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 5 reads, "Blessed, happy are the meek." Let's understand this word meek. In Psalms chapter 37, verse 11, meek is used referring to the patient or those that stand still, stand firm in his word, that are oppressed. So in Psalms chapter 37, verse 11, meek is used to referring to the patient, oppressed ones. So blessed, happy are the meek, for they shall inherit. Now let us understand this word inherit. It means strictly to receive by lot, to possess, to receive as one's own, to obtain. So again, there's no ambiguity here. For they shall inherit the earth. In the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 15, those that are overzealous in converting or changing Yahweh Elohim's commandments will not escape judgment. While in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 5, the meek or persevering, those resolute of Yahweh Elohim's commandments will inherit the earth. Beware, beware, beware of those that feel they have to and will make you believe what they believe. Beware of those people that feel that they have to and will try in every way possible to make you believe what they believe. The shared word, the word of the Most High, will convict all that have been called. There is no mandate in Scripture to coerce or force anyone to believe. This woe represents fanatics, leading followers to damnation. The Beattitudes represents the meek or the resolute, the committed, inheriting the earth. This is the third comparison of the woes of the scribes and the Pharisees and the Beatitudes given by Yeshua. Let us continue. We'll pick back up in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 16. Woe unto you, ye blind guides. So let us understand the word guides here. The word guides is a leader of the way. They lead the way, a teacher of the ignorant and inexperienced. But notice, he says, woe unto ye blind guides. So these guides are blind. So again, they're the antithesis of what a guide should be. Woe unto you, ye blind guides, which say, whosoever shall swear, means affirming or denying by an oath, by the temple, capital T. Now understand this. Temple, capital T, is defined as use of the temple at Jerusalem, but only, not just the edifice itself, but only of the sacred edifice or sanctuary itself, consisting of the holy place and the Holy of Holies. So it's only that particular Holy of Holies when it's talking about temple, capital T, because the temple was a big edifice. It's not talking about the temple as the edifice, but it's talking about that holy place and the Holy of Holies. It says in classical Greek, it is used of the sanctuary or cell of the temple. So it says, which say, whosoever shall swear by an oath by the temple, it is nothing. It is nothing. But, whosoever shall swear, make an oath by the gold of the temple, he is a debtor. That means he owes that. So, the scribes and the Pharisees say that it does not mean anything just to swear by the temple. If you just swear by the temple and you don't adhere to it, it's no harm, no foul. But if you swear by the gold of the temple, that is a serious commitment. You owe that. Let us continue on. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 17. Ye fools and blind, for whether is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifieth or make holy the gold? So Yeshua calls the scribes and Pharisees fools and blind, explaining that it is the temple, again, that inner sanctuary, that inner cell, that makes the gold holy. Let us continue on the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 18. And whosoever swear by the altar, it is nothing. But, whosoever sweareth by the gift that is up on it, he is guilty. So, once again, the scribes and Pharisees say that it does not mean anything to just swear by the altar. If you just swear by the altar and you don't keep that, then it's like, okay, we will let that go. But if you swear by the gift upon that altar, that is a binding obligation. Let us continue reading the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 19. Ye fools and blind, for whether is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifieth the gift, that maketh holy the gift? Yeshua once more calls the scribes and Pharisees fools and blind, explaining that it is the altar that makes the gift holy. Let's continue on in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 20. Whoso therefore shall swear by the altar, sweareth by it and by all things thereon. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 21. And whosoever shall swear by the temple sweareth by it and by him, Yahweh, that dwelleth therein. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 22. And he that shall swear by heaven sweareth by the throne of God of Elohim, and by him, Yahweh, that sitteth thereon. Yeshua makes it very lucid, very clear in these passages that it is unrighteous, not right, for a person to swear upon anything and then detach it from all the things associated with it. It's not right. This is in contrast to the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 6. So let us read. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 6 reads, Blessed, happy are they which hunger and thirst. Let us understand this hunger and thirst. Hunger and thirst is an idiom for a strong desire. So blessed are they which hunger and thirst, have a strong desire after righteousness. So let us understand this word righteousness. It means the character or quality of being right or just. The character or quality of being right or just. It was formerly spelled right wiseness, which clearly expresses the meaning. But get this, it is used to denote an attribute of God of Elohim. So blessed, happy are they which hunger and thirst, have a strong desire after righteousness, after that which is right, after that attribute of the Most High himself. For they shall be filled. Let's understand what this word filled is. In Psalms chapter 42, verses 1 and 2, it is speaking of to fulfill or satisfy the desire of anyone. Remember, hunger and thirst, that strong desire, they shall be filled, satisfy the desire of anyone. For they shall be filled, their desire shall be satisfied. In the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verses 16 through 22, it is calling out a false sense of righteousness being used. A man-made rationale of what is right and wrong. While in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 6, it is describing true righteousness sought by true desire. This woe represents false righteousness sought by casuistry. And this word casuistry means the use of clever but unsound reasoning, especially in relation to moral questions. So this woe represents false righteousness that is using unsound reasoning, especially related to moral questions. The Beattitudes represents true righteousness sought by true desire. This is the fourth comparison of the woes of the scribes and the Pharisees and the Beatitudes given by Yeshua. We've revealed four, there's four more. So let us continue. We're going to pick up now in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 23. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. Remember, stage actors, pretending as if they are following the law. For ye pay tithe, or you give give of mint. So now let us understand mint. Mint is a kind of small odoriferous herb with which the Jews used to scatter on the floors of their houses and synagogues, an adjective denoting sweet smelling. So ye scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye pay or ye give of mint and anise. Anise is dill, was used for food and for pickling. And cumin. Cumin is a plant with aromatic seeds used as a condiment. So woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, you stage actors, for you give of this sweet smelling herb and dill and this aromatic seed. So the Messiah is basically saying that what the scribes and Pharisees are giving are the garnishing and condiments. So get that point. Because then he says, and have omitted, forsaken, given up, abandoned the weightier matters of the law. So you gave the garnishing and the condiments. So just think about that. You're going to a nice dinner and you're ready to eat. And then they bring out the salad and the rolls and the butter. And then that's it. He says, you've just abandoned the weightier matters of the law, the meal that the people actually came to receive. And then he goes on to say judgment, the standard of judgment, just dealings, mercy is the, get this, it's the outward, understand this word mercy here. It's the outward manifestation of pity, and it assumes need on the part of him who receives it and resources adequate to meet the need on the part of him who shows it. So in order to give mercy, there has to be people that are in need of it, which I don't think that's going to be hard to find. But then the resources adequate to meet on the part of those that show it. So if you're going to show mercy, you have to have the resources adequate to meet the need of that person that's in mercy, in need of mercy. He goes on to say, and faith, the conviction based on hearing, trustworthiness, worthy of confidence, dependable. He says, these ought ye. It is necessary, one must. These ought ye to have done, and in addition, not to leave the other undone. So yes, you were to serve the garnishments, the salad, the bread, and the rolls, but you still were to give the meal to go with it. Let us continue on in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23, verse 24. Ye blind guides, which strain. Now get this word strain. Primarily denotes to strain thoroughly, get this, as through a sieve or strainer, as in the case of wine. So this is showing you how, to the degree that they're straining. So as in the case of wine, so as to remove the unclean midge or gnat. So this is literal. Ye blind guides, which strain at a gnat and swallow. Now let us understand this word swallow. Used with this meaning physically, but figuratively. So it means swallow, but it's also figuratively because it goes on to say, and swallow a camel. So they're straining out a gnat, but the word camel is considered or not the word, but the animal, the camel is considered an unclean animal. So now you're using and straining out a gnat, but then you're swallowing a whole unclean animal. That's the comparison that he's given. The Messiah is telling the scribes and Pharisees that not only are they only giving garnishing and condiments, They have abandoned the more important matters of the law, that they should give the whole law, not leaving out the great or small. Yeshua calls the scribes and Pharisees blind guides because they go through great efforts to prevent insignificant infractions against the law, but allow soul-saving infractions to be overlooked. This is in contrast to the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 7. So let us read that. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 7 read, "Blessed, happy are the merciful." So let us understand this word merciful. Merciful means compassionate, not simply possessed of pity, but actively compassionate. Is used of Christ the Messiah as a high priest in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 17. So happy are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Now get this word mercy here. In Psalms chapter 41, verse 1, it is speaking of having pity or mercy shown to one to obtain mercy. I'm going to say this again. Get what he's saying. For they shall obtain mercy. Understand what it's talking about here in Psalms 41, 1. Having pity or mercy shown to one. So that means you're showing pity or mercy to one. And again, remember what that word merciful means. It means to actively be compassionate, showing this mercy in order to obtain mercy. So it's saying that you have to show mercy in order to receive mercy. Blessed are the merciful, those that show mercy, for they shall obtain mercy. This is what he's saying here. This woe represents mercy omitted and left undone. The Beattitudes represents the merciful obtaining mercy. This is the fifth comparison of the woes of the scribes and the Pharisees and the Beatitudes given by Yeshua. Let us continue on and pick up in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 5. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, stage actors, for ye make clean. Now understand this word clean here. For ye make clean, the word clean here means ceremonially clean. A physical cleaning, but not spiritual. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, stage actors, for ye make clean ceremonially, but not spiritually, the outside of the cup. This word cup is figurative of one's lot or experience, joyous or sorrowful. Okay, so ye make clean ceremonially, not spiritually, the outside of your experience and platter. But within, they are full. This word full here, let us really understand this word full. To be full, to be heavily laden with. Heavily laden with. Not to like, okay, you're full. No, heavily laden with. So the outside of the, so you make clean ceremonially, but not spiritually, the outside of the cup of your experience and platter, but within they are full, they're heavy laden of exhortation. Now, exhortation, it denotes pillage, plundering, robbery, extortion. And excess denotes want of strength, hence want of self-control. Incontinence, meaning lack of self-restraint, unable to contain, keep, or restrain, uncontrolled. So just uncontrollable. The Messiah is saying that the ceremonial or religious cleansing will not suffice if the soul or the inside of you is not cleansed from the fulfillment of pillaging, plundering, robbery, extortion, and no self-control. Let us continue on in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 26. Thou blind Pharisees, cleanse first that which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also. So now these verses here, this woe, is in contrast to the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 8. Let us read. Blessed, happy are the pure. Now, the word pure here, let us understand this. The word pure is used in Psalms chapter 24, verse 4 as being cleansed. Cleansed. Happy are the pure, the cleansed in heart, for they shall see God. They shall see Elohim. This woe represents uncleanliness within. The Beattitudes represents purity within, and the vision, the opportunity of Elohim hereafter. This is the sixth comparison of the woes of the scribes and the Pharisees and the Beatitudes given by Yeshua. Let us continue and pick up in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 27. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, stage actors, for ye are like unto whited. Let's understand what this means. Whited means to cover with lime plaster over whitewash. So ye are like unto whited, or something that's been covered over, whitewashed, sepulchres, tombs. So that's what he's comparing them to. But get this, he says, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones and of all uncleanliness. Golly. I mean, this is what he's telling them. This is what you're likened unto. Something that's been plastered and covered over, whitewashed on the outside, but inside full of dead men's bones and all uncleanliness. The Gospel of Matthew 23, verse 28. Let us read that. Even so, ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within ye are full of hypocrisy and iniquity, or lawlessness, unrighteousness. Now, this is in contrast to the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 9. So let us read that. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 9 reads, blessed, happy are the peacemakers. So let's understand this word, peacemakers. In Psalms chapter 133, verse 1, it is speaking of mankind living peacefully with one another. So blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God, the children of Elohim. This woe represents hypocrisy and lawlessness. The Beatitudes represents peacemakers who are called the sons of Elohim. This is the seventh comparison of the woes of the scribes and the Pharisees and the Beatitudes given by Yeshua. There's one remaining. So let us continue with the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 29. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, stage actors, because ye build the tombs of the prophets and garnish. Understand this word garnish. It means primarily to arrange, to put in order cosmetic, to adorn, to ornament. So woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, stage actors, because ye build the tombs of the prophets and garnish and cosmetically adorn and ornament the sepulchres of the righteous. Let's read the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 30. And say, this is the scribes and Pharisees talking, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Let's read the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 31. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourself, that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets. Get this. He's telling them, now this is what they said, that if they were in the days of their fathers, they would not have partaken in been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. But Yeshua answers them very bluntly. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves by your own actions. You give credibility that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets. Let's read the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 32. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers. So the Messiah in the last two verses is responding to what the scribes and Pharisees say in verse 30, that they wouldn't have partaken in the blood of the prophets. Yeshua's reply is that if you were compared to your fathers, you would equal them in your deeds. That's basically what he's saying. There's no difference. Let us continue in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 33. Ye serpents. Now let us understand serpents here. Serpents is the characteristics of the serpent. So that's what he's saying. When he's really talking about the characteristics. He's talking about their character here. Ye serpents. The characteristics of the serpent, as alluded to in the scripture, are mostly evil. It is treachery. It is venom. It is prowling. It is murderous proclivities or tendencies. So this is what he's talking about here, their character. Ye serpents, ye generation of vipers. So now let us understand this word vipers is probably a generic term for poisonous snake. So here he's actually calling them a snake, a poisonous snake. First, he's just calling them, their character is of a snake. Treachery, venom, prowling, murderous proclivities or tendencies. And then he goes on to say, ye generations of vipers, ye generation of poisonous snakes. How can ye escape the damnation of hell? How can you do it? Now, this is in contrast to the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verses 10 through 12. So let us read. Blessed are they, happy are they, which are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Now, in Psalms chapter 37, let us understand this phrase here, righteousness' sake. In Psalms chapter 37, verses 39 through 40, it is speaking of the righteous being persecuted. Blessed or happy are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are, happy are ye when men shall revile, to reproach, accuse, blame you, and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verse 12. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. Now, this last and eighth woe represents the damnation of the persecutors. versus the Beattitudes represents the reward of the persecuted. This completes the 8 woes of the scribes and Pharisees as told by the Messiah. But he does not end here. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 23 verses 34 through 39 begins the prophecy of the Messiah of the scribes and Pharisees. He goes on to prophesy about these scribes and Pharisees. So understand that this is sharing things that will happen in the future. So if we understand Yeshua is prophesying of what's going to happen in the future to the scribes and Pharisees, this makes this important to know. So this will be of importance to know about the prophecy then of the church and its leadership, its scribes and Pharisees. So let us continue reading and pick back up in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23 verse 34. Wherefore, meaning for this cause, the cause of the 8 woes defined in the prior verses. So wherefore, for this cause, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes. And some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them shall ye scourge. Now this word scourge, just so we can really get an understanding of this, it's not just like, oh, they beat them. This word scourge has a specific meaning. The Jewish method of scourging, as described in the Mishnah, was by the use of 3 thongs of leather, the offender receiving 13 stripes on the bare breast and 13 on each shoulder. The 40 stripes save 1, as administered to Paul 5 times. So behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them shall ye scourge in your synagogues and persecute them from city to city. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 23 verse 35. That upon you, the scribes and the Pharisees, may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth. Again, I got to pause here because everybody talks about, I shouldn't say everybody, but the church especially talks about Yeshua being meek and kind and merciful. This is Yeshua speaking. He says that upon you, talking about the scribes and the Pharisees, may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth. No, I want it to be upon you. This is what he's saying. From the blood of righteous Abel, Cain's brother, where it started, the first death, unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachias. Now, this is important. This is important. Remember, 2 Timothy 3:16. All scripture is profitable. All scripture is profitable. Okay? For understanding. So this means something here. Because this is not the son of Yahudiah that's in 2 Chronicles chapter 24 verses 20 and 21, who at the king's command was stoned in the court of the house of the Lord. But Zechariah, the prophet, because there was a Zacharias that was stoned. If you go back and look at that in 2 Chronicles chapter 24 verses 20 through 21, there was a Zacharias that was stoned there. But this is actually talking about the prophet Zacharias. And we know him from Zechariah 7 verses 1 and Zechariah 7 verse 7. And here, it doesn't really tell us how Zacharias died. But who we here learn was killed in the same way. And get this, and why may it not be prophetic of another Zechariah, the son of Baruch, who was thus martyred some 36 years after Yeshua said this. So get this. So I want you to understand when they talk about Zacharias and him being murdered, get this and catch this. Don't miss this. So it says that upon you, the scribes and Pharisees, may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachas, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. So he's telling them exactly where they slew him. You slew Zacharias, the son of Barachas. This is Zacharias the prophet. It doesn't really tell us how he died, but it's telling us here. They slew him between the temple and the altar. But not only does he tell us here, but he also tells us about Zacharias, the son of Baruch, who was martyred 36 years after that this is how they were going to slay him as well. Let us continue on. The Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 36. Verily I say unto you. Now he's speaking to the multitude and his disciples. So he's gone with the scribes and the Pharisees. Verily I say unto you, all these things that were pointed out by the Messiah in this chapter, all these things shall come upon this generation. Now here, Yeshua is speaking to the nation of Israel. Remember, the scripture, sometimes Yeshua is speaking to people in general. Sometimes he's speaking to just the children of Israel. Sometimes he's speaking to just his believers. Here, Yeshua is speaking to the nation of Israel as this generation. So when he's talking about this generation, he said, upon all these things shall come upon this generation. He's talking about the nation of Israel. This is basically the end of the nation of Israel being exclusively Yahweh's chosen people, and will be validated in these closing verses of this chapter. Because at one point, the children of Israel, they had this exclusivity with the Most High because of the promise that he had made to Abraham. And not that he ever broke it, but they had this first right almost, if you will. But here, this is basically the end of that exclusivity. And again, it'll be validated in these closing verses. So let us pick up in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 37. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered? Now, understanding this word gathered here, it is said of a hen and her chickens. And it actually references Matthew chapter 23, verse 37. And so of the Lord's would be protecting. So the Lord he wanted to protecting care of the people of Jerusalem. Because again, they had that first right, that exclusivity. So, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. You are not willing. You are not willing. Let's continue in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 38. Behold, 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 now this is important. We got to understand this, what Yeshua is saying here. Let's catch all of this that he's given to us. Behold, so what's significant about this word your here is at the beginning of the Lord's ministry, referring to the temple. Remember, we talked about that Holy of Holies. Referring to the temple, he would say, it was my Father's house. And you can see that back in the Gospel of John chapter 2, verse 16. But now here at the end, after his rejection, after what he just said, how he longed, he longed he longed to gather the children and have them under her wings, but they were not willing. So at the end, after his rejection, it's now referred to, the temple is referred to as your house. So notice this little subtlety here. Behold, your house, the temple where he was speaking, So again, it's no longer his father's house, it's theirs. Behold, your house is left unto you. He's basically just giving it unto them, but it's left unto you desolate. So get that what he's saying here. It's no longer the house of the Most High, his father's house. It's your house and it's left to you desolate. The last verse here we're going to read, the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse 39. For I say unto you, the nation of Israel, again, let's always understand the who, what, when, where, and how. Who is he speaking to? He's speaking to the nation of Israel. For I say unto you, ye shall not by no means and no wise see me henceforth till ye shall say, this is the requirement of the nation of Israel to see the Messiah. This is the requirement of the nation of Israel to see the Messiah. Blessed, happy is he that cometh in the name of the Lord Yahweh. Scripture mentions this greeting of the Messiah in both the Old Testament / covenant and the New Testament / covenant. In the Old Testament / covenant in Psalms chapter 118 verse 26, and in the New Testament / covenant in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 21 verse 9. So, having covered all of these 8 woes and the 8 Beatitudes given by Yeshua himself, let us not be deceived from within, as the nation of Israel was by unrighteous leaders that received the woes of Yeshua. Remember, he was prophesying of things that would happen. So again, the church today is still following in the footsteps of this. Let us not be deceived from within by unrighteous leaders that received the woes of Yeshua. But instead, let us adhere to the Beatitudes given by Yeshua and receive his grace and mercy. I would like to invite you to continue to fellowship and worship the Sabbath with the Ecclesia next Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. In addition, please join the Ecclesia every Wednesday evening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for prayer. The link for both is provided on his servant's website. Something to think about. If you are seeking a blessing, be a blessing. If this message of something to think about has been a blessing, assist us with your time, talents, and finances in continuing to grow and move from just knowing to truly understanding the word of the Most High, Yahweh Elohim. Peace and blessings.
His servant encourages you and prays that you will continue with him on the journey of growing and moving from just knowing to understanding the word of the Most High, Yahweh Elohim. To support you on your journey, his servant offers the following resources. His servant email address. Please feel free to reach out to his servant at any time with any questions, concerns, suggestions, and/or comments. His servant website and his servant YouTube channel. You are encouraged to subscribe to be alerted of new content. In addition, his servant recommends reading or listening to the beginning of Scriptural Truth, Volume 1. It affords a strong beginning foundation in not just knowing, but understanding the Scripture.